All right, you guys. So you're probably wondering why I'm sitting next to the Apple, the Google, and the Epic Games logos. Well, first things first, there's a massive, and I mean massive, court battle going on right now that could determine the digital marketplace as we know it. So we're going to get into it. Don't forget, you guys, hit that like button, comment down below, and subscribe because we're going to talk about this. First things first, Epic Games beats Google but loses to Apple in a monopoly lawsuit. What does that all mean? Well, first things first, Epic actually pursued Google. Well, they initially pursued Apple. And of course, Google was kind of cannon fodder when it came to this entire lawsuit that is actually ongoing. First things first, this is over the Apple and Google App Store process of payment within each company's own system, and that tech giants collect a commission of up to 30% on every transaction fee. Now, this is a little misleading because it says 30% on every transaction fee. No, it's 30% on the initial transaction fee when you buy said app. But when it comes to like subscriptions and stuff like that, it's usually about 15%. Sweeney crusade against the Silicon Valley giants and had the backing of scores of small app developers who have also felt like they were getting ripped off on the Apple's App Store and Google Play Store. So, as of right now, Epic Games is like the crusader for all these small app developers because they're trying not to get ripped off. These stores are making a lot of money from creative works from them works and then the creators. Sweeney told NPR in 2020 they unveiled the federal lawsuit against Apple and Google with the aims of blowing a hole in the so-called walled gardens the tech companies maintain on their devices that Sweeney said locked out competitors. So they're looking to be able to compete more. Now, decisions in both cases are in, and they're conflicting, raising many questions about how these app stores might change. So Epic beats Google, but only after it largely lost to Apple. So on Monday this week, a jury in San Francisco ruled in favor of the Epic Games after a 4-week-long trial focusing on Apple's App Store policies. The jury found that Google acts like an illegal monopoly in a way it distributes apps and how it bills within the App Store. In 2021, a federal judge dismissed 9 out of the 10 of Epic Games' monopoly complaints against Apple in a case nearly identical to his fight with Google. How? It doesn't make sense to me. Now, I'm not going to go into all the legal jargon because guess what? I'm not much of a lawyer, but that to me doesn't make sense. How you basically have two identical cases, one against Apple, one against Google, and in a jury decision, they win against Google. But a federal judge decides no. Something's not adding up here. It's a dual conclusion almost nobody expected. For Tim Sweeney, this is a surprising turn of events since his real enemy has always been Apple, not Google. Like I said, Google is kind of cannon fodder. And Harvard Business School professor Andy Wu, who pointed out that Apple's App Store policies are even more closed off than Google's. The Google case is seen almost as a sideshow compared to Epic's case against Apple, and it's turned out to be the opposite direction. So if you guys did not know, when it comes to Apple and when it comes to Google, Google is open source. So anybody can work and create whatever they want for the Android operating system. Where when it comes to Apple, Apple is closed source. So in order to get anything to work on there, you have to have Apple's permission. And you have to have Apple to approve it so that you can do it. Now, of course, there's workarounds around it. We're not going to talk about it here. But for the most part, when it comes down to it, Apple has to approve it, period, end of story, in order for you to be able to have it work on your iPhone, on your iPad, on your Mac, what have you. So Sweeney's lawsuit has resulted in one court finding that Google is acting like a monopoly, and another court ruling that Apple is not behaving like a monopoly. Sounds like that judge is an Apple user. But what it all means for hundreds of millions of people in the US with iPhones and Androids, it depends. I don't like that. How will it affect the case? Epic is asking the U.S. Supreme Court to review its decision in the Apple case. While Apple largely won, the court ordered Apple to give people more ways to pay for things in its App Store, not just through the Apple's own payment processor, which can take a fee up to 30% of its transactions. Apple has appealed that to the Supreme Court. Apple does not have to make any changes to its App Store until the higher court says it has to. So basically, Apple is still going to run its shady corporation like they want to. Apple's like, yeah. The Google case is on a different path. The judge who presided over the trial, the U.S. District Judge James Danto, has said in a hearing that will be held in January in San Francisco about remedies, or in plain English, what Google will have to change to it to comply with the laws and stop operating like a monopoly. Which, I mean, 100% I'm down for. I'm kind of wondering because, like, if anyone is a monopoly here, it's definitely Apple. At least Google, like I said, with the open source, it kind of opened things up a little bit more. I know they say that they take in the money, Apple and Google, that's who they is, to help protect devices and help protect people. Which, to a certain extent, I can see why they do stuff like that. But for the most part, it's definitely unwarranted. And here, a professor at Stanford Law who teaches courses on competition law said the judge could be very narrow or very broad with possible remedies. So you're painting with you're painting with the can of paint. You're throwing it up there. You're hoping for the best. For example, the judge could order Google to let Fortnite back into the App Store, which was kicked off after Epic violated Google's App Store policies and offered games with a circumvent Google's App Store fees. Epic did the same with Apple. This is what brought up the entirety of it, was that Epic was like, if you want to buy our stuff, you could just buy it directly from us. Or the judge can use the jury's verdict as a way to systematically change how Google Play Store operates. The judge could blow up the idea of exclusivity in the App Store and say Google can't discriminate against among apps. Which, I mean, for the most part, Google does not discriminate as much as Apple does when it comes to apps. So Google could be required to treat all apps the same regardless of whether they were downloaded through Google Play or elsewhere. So they're talking about, like, if you got an app on your phone and you have to go elsewhere, aka your web browser, to download it. Because I remember when Epic first launched mobile Fortnite, you had to go through the Epic website in order to download it. You couldn't go to the Google App Store and download it. Even through Google, unlike Apple, allows for what is known as side loading, which Apple does not allow side loading. So basically, 95% of all downloads on Android phones happen through the Google Play Store. So 5% of them are actually allowed through side loading off of your web browser. Epic wants Google to let app developers like itself offer people their own app store on Google devices. I mean, I'm not against it, but this is the problem you're going to run into, much like you do with PCs, is you're going to run into Steam, you're going to run into Epic Games, then you're going to run into freaking, the Rockstar web launcher, then you're going to run into, there's so many freaking launchers on PC where, it's just unwarranted. Apple and Google have said that they compete against each other, undercutting the idea that either of them has monopoly control over the mobile economy, or more specifically, the economy of downloading and paying for apps, which I don't see them competing at all. That's why, I'm not sure what percentage of it is where you're like, okay, you're running a monopoly, but if you're only talking about two app stores that are basically ruling everything, that's the problem that I'm running into, and that's where you're going to run into, okay, yeah, there's a monopoly here. Experts App Store shakeup could lead to lowering prices and more innovation, which I 100% agree. Is if they allow to bring down the cuts that Apple and Google basically take, it does reduce the amount of money that consumers have to spend on said app, which then can go towards other things. So right here it says both tech titans have argued that the fees they have levied, like I said here, range between 15 to 30%. 30% on the initial download, 15% for all the downloads after that. Now it talks right here like Sony and Microsoft Xbox. So this is where another issue lies, is that Microsoft actually lowered their cuts from 30% down to 15% to compete actually with Apple. I mean, not Apple, with Epic Games when it comes to digital downloads. Sony still runs, Sony PlayStation and Steam both still run 30% of a cut when it comes to that stuff. But recently I did find out that Microsoft actually reduced their cut to 15%. The commissioning generates billions of dollars a year. Apple digital goods or services that cost money, charging a fee, including virtual items purchase, engaged subscription, blah blah blah. Yeah, whatever. But this is the other thing, is when it comes to actual regulations and everything that protect consumers, the EU actually is usually pretty on top of it, because right now, if it wasn't for the EU's ruling, I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago, Apple iPhone users would not have USB-Cs. So the iPhone 15 features a new way to charge phones with the USB-C. Well, come find out, also rolled into that package is the EU being like, hey, you guys need more app stores to compete with and other ways to pay. Which I did not know that as an American, but it's unclear if the Apple's changing its app store, change to its app stores in Europe will eventually extend to the rest of the globe, like I said, and how Google might respond. But Europe is the third largest app revenue stream behind China and the U.S. So, like I said, this massive change is on the horizon, and that's for Europe. That's not for China. That's not for the U.S. That's for Europe. That's putting that pressure on them. And now Epic Games is stepping in and being like, yo, we need to do better. We need to do more. And they're actually being the good guy. Who would have thought that? Anyways, you guys, that's just like a real brief overview as to like everything that's going on with this lawsuit. As in like changes to how you're going to potentially pay and give you more options to pay between Apple and Google, giving you more options for digital storefronts on your Android or your iPhone, and how this might impact drastically cuts that these companies take. Like I said a couple weeks ago, where PlayStation's embroiled in a legal battle in Europe for charging too much money on their storefronts. Let me know down below. What do you guys think about this? Do you think this is a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing? Are you just indifferent and you don't care? Because like I said, this is big news, especially here in America. Y'all take it easy. Have a wonderful day. Don't forget, mash that like button, subscribe, and I love you guys. I'll holler at you later. Bye.